We begin today the Gemara on Daf Nun Dalid, 3 lines down from the top of the Yomid, where it says Meisvei. So we're in the middle of a discussion here regarding the structure of the Mizbeach, and we're talking about the foundation. That the foundation of the Mizbeach, the Gemara says, was only on two sides of the Mizbeach, on the Ma'ariv, on the west, and on the Tzafim, the north. But on the Mizrach and Darim, there was no foundation. How did we get into this discussion? Because the Mishnah spoke about the carbon oilad, where you spray the bloods on the sides of the Mizbeach, and it said you don't spray the blood on all four corners. You only spray on two corners, which are diagonally across each other, and that's Mizrachis Tzfainis and Maravis Draimis. Why not on Mizrachis Draimis? Because over there was no Yisai. And the place where the blood has to be sprayed has to be in a part of the Mizbeach where there's a Yisai. And the Gemara explained before, why was there no foundation on these two sides of the Mizbeach, on the Darim and on the Mizrach? Because there was the place where Shevet Binyamin had their portion in Eretz Yisrael. The Beis HaMikdash is built on that portion, and the Mizbeach as well. But then there's the portion of Yehuda. Portion of Yehuda is on the other side, starting when you come up from Yerushalayim, and then coming into the Harabayis. That's all the portion of Yehuda. The portion of Yehuda goes all the way up to the wall of the Mizbeach. That's the Mizrach wall of the Mizbeach. When you enter in from the Azara, from the Harabayis, you come in. So Shevet Yehuda's Chelek goes all the way up to the wall of the Mizbeach. And there was one strip that came out of one Amma that went along the wall of the Darim, wall of the Mizbeach, which was also Shevet Yehuda. So because it belongs to Shevet Yehuda, there's no Yisaid of the Mizbeach over there. The Mizbeach has to be only by Shevet Binyamin. That's the way the Gemara explained it till now. So here the Gemara is going to ask on this from a halacha b'negeya to how a bird was brought as a carbon. In fact, the Gemara Meisvei, they asked a question on this. So it says later in a Braisa, Oyla Sa'if, that you have the carbon oil of the bird. How is this brought? So this Oyla Sa'if, the blood has to be squirted out onto the top of the Mizbeach. So Ketzat, how is this done? Ketzat is a nasis, that is. How was it done? So the Kayan actually walked up with the live bird onto the ramp, and he went onto the Seiviv, onto the ledge that goes around the Mizbeach. So he's standing now on the Seiviv with his bird, and over there on the Mizbeach, he's Mailik, he cuts off with his nail the head of the bird, Mimullah apart from the neck, Umavdil, and you have to separate, which means you have to cut the Kana and the Veshit, both of the pipes. And then you squeeze out the blood al-kir al-mizbeach, on the wall of the mizbeach. Okay, so now the Gemara has a problem with this. Why? Because if you're going to say that there's no foundation, so over here, when the kohen goes up, where does he turn? Whenever the kohen goes up on the mizbeach and he goes on the seiviv, so it says over there that he goes to the corner, which is draimis mizrachis, turns to the right. And over there by the Draimis Mizrachis corner, that's where the Kayan does the Malika. Now the Draimis Mizrachis corner has no Yisai. There's no foundation there. So now the question is, if you're going to say over there that by this corner of Draimis Mizrachis there's no foundation, so ba'avire ba'alme hu de ka'avid. So it comes out that what he's doing is in the airspace that does not belong to the Mizbeach. Now what's the Gemara's question? It's not so simple to understand exactly what the Gemara is asking here. So Rashi's pshat in the Gemara here is as follows: that when it comes to the blood of the bird that has to be squeezed out onto the Mizbeach or has to go onto the Mizbeach, the mitzvah is that all of the blood of the bird should go on the Mizbeach. Not only after the Shechita, or not, it's not really Shechita, it's Malika. Not only after the Malika, when you squeeze it out on the wall of the Mizbeach, but when you do the actual Malika itself and blood comes out, that blood also has to go onto the Mizbeach. So over here, the Kain is doing the Malika, and blood drips down, and it goes down to the floor where there's no Yisaid. And therefore that blood that comes out in the beginning is not going onto the Mizbeach. Afterwards, yeah, you can squeeze it out on the Mizbeach, but from the beginning it's not going on the Mizbeach, it's just going into the air, and it's going down onto the floor. So how could the Kain do the Malika here on the Mizbeach in this corner of the Dremis Mizrachis? That's the question according to Rashi. One minute. Another important detail to understand this question, Rashi adds, the Kain here is standing on the Seiviv. If he's on the Seiviv and he's going to do the Malika of the bird, the Seiviv protruded from the Mizbeach and he's standing on this ledge, so where's the blood going to go to? It's not going to go into the air, onto the floor, it's going to fall onto the Seiviv. So what's the Gemara's question? All the blood is going on the Mizbeach. That's how it should be done. So Rashi says, later the Gemara says that what happens if the Kohen, for whatever reason, decides that he's standing there on the Seiviv, he wants to bend down and do the Malike with the bird in his hands, not over the Seiviv, but sort of on the side of the Seiviv or below the Seiviv. He's allowed to. You don't have to stand with the bird in the above the Seiviv that the blood should go onto the Seiviv. It says there clearly that you're able to do it even bending down with his hands below. Then what's going to happen is that if you have a Yisaid on the bottom, the Yisaid of the Mizbeach was an Amma high, but it also protruded an Amma. So then even if the Kohen sticks his hand down under the Seiviv and he does the Malika there, the blood is going to drip onto the Yisaid. So all the blood of this bird is going to go onto the Mizbeach. But if there's no Yisaid here, so where's the blood going to go? It's going to go onto the floor. And that's a problem because the mitzvah is supposed to be that all the blood goes on the Mizbeach. That's the question of the Gemara according to Rashi.
And he's not supposed to do the Melika on top on the Mizbeach.
No, not necessarily. Correct. Yeah, correct.
So the Kohen should be instructed in such a situation. You don't bend down.
But that's the thing, though. It says later, Befedish in a Braise, that he's allowed to bend down. He's allowed to. So the question is, Chatchila is allowed to.
Even though you know that the Yisaid is not going to be there.
Correct. That's the question. If there's no Yisaid, so then how is he allowed to bend down and do it in such a ofen where the blood is not going to land on a portion of the Mizbeach?
He's bending down, or he's just turning around, and now it's after the Seiviv?
I don't know if it's after the Seiviv. It seems like he's sort of bending down and sticking his hand in under the Seiviv. Sort of.
That's pretty acrobatic.
Yeah. He has to balance himself. But if he's sticking his hand all the way out, then the Yisaid may not even help for that. You're going too far out anyways.
He's standing on the Seiviv,
right?
And over here,
I understand.
Nothing. He just turns around. He doesn't want to get dirty.
Okay, so that may be the reason why he's doing this. He wants to do it like under his feet, like in a place where he's not going to get dirty from it, perhaps. But it sounds like that we're talking about under the Seiviv. And then is where the concern is that the blood is going to go onto the floor and not onto the Mizbeach.
Even turning around will go on the floor because there's no Yisaid there.
Under the Seiviv. Okay, let's see. So the Gemara answers. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says, Eimer, you should say as follows, Kach hisno. This was the condition where you have the portion of Shevet Binyamin and the portion of Shevet Yehuda that meets right here at the wall of the Mizbeach. So the condition is Avira de Binyamin, the airspace of this area belongs to Shevet Binyamin, Karka de Yehuda. Only the floor itself belongs to Shevet Yehuda. So if the blood would go down to the floor, it's going onto the floor that belongs to Yehuda. But the airspace does belong to Binyamin. Now, what does the Gemara gain with this answer? Okay, the airspace belongs to Binyamin, but the airspace, the blood is still not landing onto the Mizbeach. It's landing onto the floor, which is Shevet Yehuda. So Rashi adds to the Gemara and says, what the Gemara means to say is that on this corner, Mizrachas Draimis, where they did the Malika of the bird, there was an additional ledge that stuck out of the Mizbeach under the Seiviv. There was no Yisaid there, but there was an additional ledge that was sticking out there, that if the blood of the bird is going to fall down, it shouldn't fall onto the ground, but it should fall onto this ledge, that it should fall onto the Mizbeach. And since it's in that airspace that belongs to Binyamin, so there they built this ledge which belongs to the Mizbeach, that where Binyamin is supposed to have the Mizbeach. But on the floor, once you get to the floor which belongs to Yehuda, there they didn't build a foundation for the Mizbeach because the floor belongs to Yehuda. That's Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. Taisvis has a different pshat in this. Again?
That must be a bigger.
Maybe. It was sticking out. Another ledge there for the blood to fall on this. According to Taisvis, the Gemara is not discussing this point because the Rashi's pshat in the Gemara is a little bit difficult to understand. As you see here, there's a lot missing in the lashon of the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't mention anything about a ledge that was sticking out. And this whole point that I said before, that according to Rashi, the question is that the Kohen may bend down under the Seiviv and the blood. Taisvis says that the point is something else. The Gemara is not discussing the blood. The Gemara is discussing the act of the Malika itself. And Taisus brings Rabbeinu Tam that when you do the Malika itself has to be in the space of the Mizbeach, in a place which belongs to the Mizbeach. So the Gemara is asking, if the Kohen is standing on this Mizrachis Draimis corner, which belongs to Shevet Yehuda, so it comes out that he's doing the Malika in the airspace which does not belong to Binyamin anymore, because Yehuda's portion comes all the way up to the wall of the Mizbeach. by Mizrach and by Darim. So when he stands there in that area, he's doing the Malika of the bird in an area that does not belong to the Mizbeach. That's the Gemara's question. And on that the Gemara answers that the airspace of this area does belong to the Mizbeach. Why? Because the airspace belongs to Binyamin. And therefore, the Mizbeach is supposed to be in Binyamin's Chelek, and that airspace, since it's from Binyamin, it also belongs to the Mizbeach. It's only the bottom, the floor, that belongs to Yehuda, and that is a section that does not belong to the Mizbeach, and they did not build a Yisai there. So the Pshat in the Gemara, according to Taisus, you don't have to add over here anything about a ledge, and about the blood, and about bending over. It's about the Malika itself. That's Taisus' Pshat.
Just like okay, Mitzat Machlo, I understand the line going
Yeah.
through. But it's Kulei Beis Hamikdash.
Yeah.
What do you come in telling me Yehuda Binyamin?
Because true, but the bracha that was said, Ben Seif of Shachain, was that Binyamin is the one that was zeichet that Yidid Hashem Yishkan Levetach Olav, that is the Eibishter dwells Dafke by Shevet Binyamin, and the Mizbeach has to be by Shevet Binyamin. So if it's Shevet Yehuda, it's not shaykh to Yidid Hashem Yishkan. The Shechina is not out there. That's what it's based on.
Differences in levels of kedusha.
Of course, as the kedusha saying, yeah, absolutely. There's different levels.
I don't know if this question belongs here, but why did they make him Mizbeach? They could have moved over the Mizbeach.
No. Everything
that will solve the problem.
Everything is meduyak exactly the space. Okay, let's see the Amshel Gemara. Zog the Gemara. My lehava lo yisayt. So here the Gemara actually brings a machlokes about this. So until here we're saying that there was a foundation on the Mizbeach on two sides, on the Ma'ariv or on the Tzafin. On the Mizrach and on the Darim, there was no foundation. Right? But what does that really mean? Rav says bibinyan. Rav says it means literally. They did not build a Yisayid on the east or on the south of the Mizbeach. Levi Yomar, however, Levi says bedomim. It only means regarding qualifying for the blood to be poured there. There was physically a Yisayid there, but it did not have the kedusha of the Mizbeach for the blood to be poured there, since the Yisayid on these two sides belongs to Yehuda, where the Mizbeach is supposed to be by Shevet Binyamin. So therefore the blood is not poured there. Now the Gemara explains the source of the machlekes of Rav and Levi. Rav translates the pasuk where it says, it speaks about by Shevet Binyamin, when it says Yidid Hashem Yishkan Levetach Olav. So what does the Targum there say? So according to Rav, the Targum there says Bachsante Yizbane Madbacha, that in his inheritance the Mizbeach is built. So that means that only in his inheritance there's a building of the Mizbeach. If it's an area which belongs to Yehuda, there is no portion, no section of the Mizbeach which is there. So therefore he says physically they did not build the Yisayid on those two sides. However, Levi had the translation, the Targum Munkel is a bit different. Bachsante, in his inheritance, Yizbane Makdasha. The Mikdash is built. Now, how does the Gemara tie here the word Makdasha? It doesn't refer only to the Beis HaMikdash. The Beis HaMikdash actually was also completely in the portion of Binyamin, but Makdasha here is also referring to the Mizbeach, but what it means is Makaim Mekudesh Ledamim. Within the Mizbeach, the section of the Mizbeach that is sanctified for blood to be poured there, that will be only by Binyamin and not by Yehuda. So there was physically a Yisayid there, which to some extent is defined as a chelik of the Mizbeach, but not for this point, not for the Aveda, not for the bloods to be poured there. So that's the source of their argument in the Lashon of the Targum of this pasuk. Now the Gemara is going to ask questions, bring rayas here for this subject regarding the Yisayid of the Mizbeach. So the Gemara begins and asks, I believe first the Gemara here asks on Rav. Let's see. Toshema, let's bring a raya to this. So it says in the Mishnah in Midas, Hayisayid, Hayimahalach, Al Pnei, Kol Hatzafim, Val Pnei, Kol HaMa'ariv. The foundation of the Mizbeach, it's on the entire north of the Mizbeach and the west of the Mizbeach. And Oichol Bedarim Ama Achas, Ubemizrach Ama Achas. But then it also goes into one Ama of Darim and one Ama of Mizrach, because the Yisayid goes the entire Tzafin. So if it goes on the whole length of Tzafin, so it ends by the Mizrach one Amma, and the Yisayid it goes on the entire length of Ma'ariv, so it ends at the end of the corner of Ma'arav Izdraim, so it goes in one Amma to the Darim side. Okay, so now you see over here, clearly, like what Rav said, that the Yisayid is only on Ma'ariv side and on Tzafin side. On the other two sides, there's no Yisayid. So this is a question on Levi, actually. So the Gemara answers, "My oichol nami bedomim." When it uses this term of oichol, that it only goes in one amma there, it means to qualify for the blood to be poured in that place or to be sprayed in that place. But it doesn't mean physically. Just like when you get to the Targum and the Pasuk, so Levi, that is, Levi darshans that we're not talking physically. Physically, there was a Yisait. So over here as well, in the Lashon of this Mishnah, it's talking about the qualification for the blood, but not physically. Physically, there was a Yisait around and around. Tashema, the Gemara brings that ayah from another Lashon of the in the Mishnah. It says, HaMizbeach haya shloishim mishtayim shloishim mishtayim. What is the size of the Mizbeach? 32 amas by 32 amas. Now this measurement of 32 by 32 refers to the measurement of the Mizbeach that includes the foundation. As we'll see soon from the Gemara, when you go above the foundation, so then the size of the Mizbeach is actually 30 by 30. 32 by 32 is the foundation. So over here it actually seems to be saying, like Levi, that the foundation of the Mizbeach was all around. And you measure the Mizbeach from all sides, it's 32 by 32. And says the Gemara, according to Rav, it doesn't mean that if you look on all sides, you're going to see 32 by 32. It depends which side. If you're going to look from Maidiv side and Sofin side, you're going to see 32 by 32. But if you're going to come around to Darim side and Mizrach side, it's going to be 31 by 31. That's because you're missing that one Amma there for the east side. Toshama, the Gemara brings another ayah. This is regarding the ramp of the Mizbeach. The Mizbeach itself was 32 Amas wide. And then the ramp, how long was the ramp of the Mizbeach? Also 32. So now, if you would think that if you want to measure from the beginning of the ramp all the way to the end of the other side of the Mizbeach, what's going to be the entire length? So it's 32 and 32, so it's 64. But what does it say? It actually says that if you measure from the beginning of the ramp to the end of the other side of the Mizbeach, that it's only 62, not 64. We're missing 2 amas. That's what this Mishnah is addressing. What happened to those 2 amas from the side of from the beginning of the ramp to the other side of the Mizbeach? So the Mishnah there says that Nimtza, because on the Darim side of the Mizbeach, where the ramp was attached completely to the Mizbeach. Nimtza Pereach, that it's going over sort of, it's goes into Amma al Yisaid va al Seviv. And the way the Mizbeach was built, there was we'll see soon, it's going to bring here all the details. The bottom part of the Mizbeach was 32. Then you went up an Amma, and then you had the next section of the Mizbeach was only 30. And then afterwards you went up 5 Amas, and then you went in again, and the next section of the Mizbeach was 28 by 28. Right, so when the Yisaid was, not Yisaid, sorry, the Kevesh, the ramp, when the ramp was placed on the south of the Mizbeach, it was pushed in all the way on top of the part of the Mizbeach that went in already 2 amas. Because after the Yisaid, it went in 1 amma, and then after the next section of the Mizbeach, which was 5 amas in, it went in another amma. So the Kevesh, the ramp, was pushed in all the way above those 2 amas that went inside the Mizbeach. So therefore, when you measure from one side of the Mizbeach, from the beginning of the ramp to the end of the other side, you're losing 2 amas because it was completely attached and it went in 2 amas into the Mizbeach. That's what the Mishnah describes there. Now, what do you see from that lashon of the Mishnah? We're talking here about the darim of the Mizbeach. And it's saying regarding the darim of the Mizbeach that the ramp goes in over the Yisayid of the Mizbeach. So you see that even on the darim side, there is actually a Yisayid. Rav says, no, they didn't build a Yisayid there. So this proves what Levi said, that physically there was a Yisayid there. So the Gemara says that, according to Rav, you'll say it means, Eime keneged ama Yisayid, ve'al ama Yisayid, aval ama Seiviv, that the ramp was pushed in, not on an actual Yisayid, keneged that ama that a Yisayid should have been there. And then also, it was pushed in further, another amma above that area where the Mizbeach went in, another amma, when you went 5 amas up, it went in another amma over there. But it wasn't an actual Yisayid there. It's area that corresponds to that amma that there was a Yisayid on the other sides of the Mizbeach.
But if you're not going to have it against up all these, there's no way that the top of the ramp is going to be hitting the Mizbeach.
Yeah. So that's why they put it in.
Just going to slip
Exactly. So that's why it went. That's why it did. They did push it in all the way that they should be able to go onto the Mizbeach. Correct. Another ayah, the Gemara asks, I believe this is a question on Rav as well, Toshama. So here, you'll see the details of the Mizbeach. And it actually tells you how they built the Mizbeach. The Tani Levi taught, Ketzad Bain Nisa Mizbeach. How do you build a Mizbeach? Mivi and Malbein, they brought basically a wooden, they created first a wooden frame. Shu shloishim mishtayim al shloishim mishtayim. 32 amas by 32 amas. The goyvoy amma, and it was tall 1 amma. Right? This is the way it's done today. When they pour cement, you create a wooden frame and then you pour the cement, a mold. So over here, when they built the Mizbeach, they created this wooden frame, a mold of 32 amas by 32 amas that was 1 amma high, and then they filled it with the material to create the Mizbeach. And what did they make this material of? Well, maybe chilukei avanim mufulames. They brought stones, pieces of stones that were smoother. What are they? They're smoother. They're moist. They came from the water, from areas which are moist, and therefore these stones should not be so rough. And because the mizbeach has to be 100% smooth, so we don't want to use any stones that are going to be rough. Actually, the mizbeach, if it wasn't 100% smooth, like a knife that you use for shechita, even if there could be a nick with your fingernail, then the mizbeach is not good. It has to be 100% smooth. Therefore, they use these kind of stones. Ben gdoilas, ben ktanis, whether large or small. And then Omevi Sid, you bring plaster, the kunya, and kunya, what do they have there for kunya? Again? Oh, no, that's Sid. Sid is lime.
Oh.
It's lime or plaster. Kunya is molten lead, I believe. Yeah? Lead.
Glaze.
Molten lead or lead glaze. And then v'zefes and tar. And umemache, it's melted, v'shoifech, and you spill it into this the rocks that you put there, and that creates the cement, sort of, but it's not cement. That creates that first part of the structure of the mizbeach, the foundation of the mizbeach. V'zeu makam yisai. This is the foundation. Okay, that's the first thing. So that's 32 by 32. Then v'chayzer maybe malben shu shleishim amma shleishim amma. Then you build another mold, a frame of 30 by 30 amas, v'goy v'chamish amas, and it's 5 amas tall. Or maybe chaluki avonim chulu. Again, you bring the same materials mentioned before to fill this space, and you have now the second section of the mizbeach, which is 30 by 30, 5 amas tall. And then v'chayzer maybe malben. Again, you bring another mold. That's made shuhu chavches al chavches amas. That's 28 by 28 amas. The goyvoy gimel amas, and it's 3 amas tall. Or maybe chiluki chulu. Again, you bring the different materials mentioned before to fill this. V'hu makam amaracha. That's the top part of the mizbeach. And this is besides the yisaid, actually. It doesn't mention here the yisaid. Besides the yisaid that was left on amma that protruded in the middle of the mizbeach. The seiviv, I meant. Sorry. Yeah. Besides the seiviv, that is the ledge that's sticking out. And this is the top part of the mizbeach, which is the place of the maracha. Okay, so we have the entire height of the mizbeach. And now v'chayzer maybe malbein. Then you bring again a mold, shu amal amma, and this is going to be for the corners, for the top 4 corners of the mizbeach, 1 amma by 1 amma, and then you create that mold on the corners of the mizbeach. Or maybe chilukei avanim mufulamais, ben gdeilis, ben ktanis. You bring these smooth stones, large or small, and maybe zefes v'kunya, and you bring the tar and the molten lead, umemache, and it's melted, v'shoifech, and you pour it into this to create the corners of the mizbeach. V'zeh keren. These are the 4 corners of the mizbeach. V'chein l'chol keren. A keren, the same is done for every single corner. This is the description of how they build the mizbeach. Okay, so now the Gemara asks on Rav, you see here clearly that the Yisayid of the Mizbeach was on all sides. It was 32 by 32. That means that you have a foundation that protrudes on the bottom of the Mizbeach on all sides. So how does Rav say that on Mizrach and on Darim there was no Yisayid? If you'll argue and say the guy is lay that after they made this foundation with this frame, with this and it was sticking out on all sides, then afterwards they cut it off on those 2 sides. After it was dry, they cut it off, so there should not be a Yisayid there, and they shave by the Shevet of Yehuda. So the Gemara says that can't be, because in the pasuk it says Avonim Shleimos, that the stones of the Mizbeach have to be whole, it has to be perfectly smooth, and if you're going to cut it after it dries, it's impossible to do it, that it should be perfectly smooth.
Because you used a metal implement.
That's another point, which Taisus brings up, that if they have to cut it, they're using a metal tool to cut it, and you're not allowed on the Beis HaMikdash, Leisanaf Aleim Barzel. Yeah. That's another question that the Gemara could have asked over here. Correct? Taisus brings that up. So how is this done according to Rav if there was no Yisayid on those 2 sides? So the Gemara answers, the Machis Midi Mitusei V'Shakale. When they made this mold, on those 2 sides, Darim and Mizrach, they put inside a piece of wood that they filled it with, so that when they're going to pour the foundation of the Mizbeach, over there on those two sides is going to be a piece of wood, and then when after it dries, they'll take out that piece of wood, and there won't be the foundation there. Okay? And they did it in such a way that when you're going to take out those pieces of wood, it's able to come out easily, it doesn't attach, it's able to come out easily, and therefore there was actually no yesod in those two sides. And the Gemara shows how we see that this was actually done regarding the Mizbeach itself. Because if you're not going to say that they use this method for building the Mizbeach itself, so then there's another part of the Mizbeach that you're going to have a problem with. Rav Kahana says, Avonim shel karnois, the stone of the Mizbeach, which is of the top four corners of it, chalulisayu. They were actually, there was a hollow inside. I don't know if it was completely hollow, but it had a hole inside. Where do we see this? Because the pasuk says, "Umalu kemizrak kizavi is mizbeach," that you fill it like a bowl that's filled, that hold your blood inside. And so the corners of the mizbeach were also like a bowl that the blood that was poured or that was spread in the mizbeach went inside the holes of the corners of the mizbeach. We had before regarding the karmachatas that they would put it on the corners of the mizbeach and the blood would go inside these holes. So how did they do this? How did they make the holes inside the corners of the mizbeach? So Hachanami, over here you have the same problem. Avonim shleimos, Omer Achmana, the Torah says it has to be full, smooth stones. So if you're going to make the corners completely rock solid, and then you're going to start drilling a hole inside somehow, it's not going to be smooth. So therefore, the only way they did it...
It's a mold within a mold.
Oh, so Ella, the way they did it is, the machis midi mituse, they put something inside. When they pour the mold, they put something inside there, and then after it dries, v'shakalei. Then they took it out, and you had it was hollow inside. That was regarding the corners. So Hachanami, here as well, regarding the two sides where there was no yisai, the machis midi mituse v'shakalei. According to Rav, you put something there, and then you took it out, so there was no yisai on that side. Okay, this is the conclusion of the discussion regarding the foundation of the Mizbeach. The Gemara brings regarding the location, Bechlal, of the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, Darish Rava, Rava Darshan, Maidach Siv. What does it say? That Vayelech David Shmuel, Vayeshu Benayos. Let me see over here. It says that this is the pasuk. It says in Shmuel where it says that they went and they were together in Noyos or Benuyos or Benuyos, that is. And then it also says Berama. They were in Noyos and they were in Rama. So the question is, where were they? V'chima in Noyos, it's Rama. It seems like it's two different places. So why is it saying the pasuk they were in Noyos and they were in Rama? Ella, the answer is Shahayu Yoshvin Berama. They were in Rama. That was the place where Shmuel lived, and David came to Shmuel in Rama. And what does it say? Noyos. V'oiskin b'noyos shel olam. And they were sitting together, occupied with the beauty of the world, meaning the Beis HaMikdash. They were trying to figure out what's the right location, where to build the Beis HaMikdash. That's what they were figuring out. So how did they figure it out? Amri, so they said as follows. The pasuk says, Shmuel.
David and Shmuel.
David and Shmuel. Yeah. So the pasuk says, "V'kamta ve'alisa elamokim." When it speaks about going up to the Beis HaMikdash, it says, "And you will go up." So that means Melamed sheBeis HaMikdash gavaya mikol Eretz Yisrael, that the Beis HaMikdash is higher than the rest of Eretz Yisrael. So we have to find the place of the Beis HaMikdash in the highest place in Eretz Yisrael. Now, Eretz Yisrael gavaya mikol Eretzis. Eretz Yisrael is also higher than all other lands in the world. Now over here, Rashi says that this detail doesn't really belong in there. This is learned out regarding another pasuk, regarding another Inyan, when it speaks about the Yidden being gathered to Eretz Yisrael, and there it says that Yidden will be gathered and be brought up to Eretz Yisrael. It's a side point; doesn't really come in here. Okay, so they knew one thing, that the Beis HaMikdash has to be on a mountain in a place which is the highest place in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, there's a discussion actually in Mefarshim about this, because actually in Eretz Yisrael there are other places in the north, in the Galil, that are taller than the mountain of Har HaMiri and the Beis HaMikdash. Okay, whatever the answer to that is, but that's how they figure this out, that it has to be on the highest place. Okay, but now, but he didn't know exactly the spot where it has to be over there in Yerushalayim, in this area. He didn't know exactly where it has to be. How did they figure this out? I see Sefer Yeshua. They brought the Sefer Yeshua where it says the borders of the boundaries of the Shvatim in their portions in Eretz Yisrael. Now, Bekuluk say by all of them, when it says the boundaries, it uses the term V'yorad Hagvul. Take out over here V'Allah. It's not. It's by all of them. It says the term V'yorad, that the Gvul goes downward, or it says V'tor Hagvul. It uses the term V'tor, which means that it turns, or it turns in a certain direction. That's the term that it uses by all the Shvatim when it speaks about the border. However, b'Shevet Binyamin, it says va'alaksiv. It says, and you go up. V'yarad leiksiv. The term v'yarad, it does not say. So Omri, they said, based on this, Shema mina hacho mekaimai. So I see that this is the place that Torah uses the term va'ala by Binyamin. This is the place to build the Beis HaMikdash.
Where?
By Shevet Binyamin. So Rashi actually points out another detail here. By all other Shvatim, when it says the boundary, it doesn't say all 4 boundaries of each Shevet, because it's not necessary. If I have one Shevet that's near another Shevet, so if I give one boundary of one Shevet, and then I say the boundary of the next Shevet, I don't have to give you all 4 boundaries of each Shevet, because I already said the boundary of the next Shevet, so it's understood that the Shevet before ends by this. But over here by Binyamin and by Yehuda, the Pasuk does spell out all 4 boundaries. And the reason why it's doing it, because it wants you to see exactly where all the 4 boundaries of Shevet Binyamin, to know that this is the place of where the Beis HaMikdash is built. And then in addition, the Gemara says that by Binyamin, when it says all the boundaries, it doesn't use the term V'yarat, it uses the term V'allah. So they knew that that's where it has to be built. Okay, but now, Omri, they said, Shmami na hachu mikaim. Oh, this is the place. Now, Savar lemivne, they were going to build it in the highest place, which is not exactly in Yerushalayim. It's Be'en Eitam, in a place where there was a fountain of water, no, a wellspring, that is, a wellspring of water, which is Eitam, which was outside of Yerushalayim. Rashi says that in the pasuk there, in Yeshua, this is the place that's called Mein Naftoyach. It was a wellspring called Mein Naftoyach, that when you go all the way up on a mountain there, it's not exactly inside Yerushalayim. And the reason they wanted to build the Beis HaMikdash there is because they said the Midli. This is actually the highest point by Shevet Binyamin. But then they said, Omri nisati bei kolil. Let's go a little bit lower down. We're not going to build in the highest spot, but we're going to go where the Beis HaMikdash is in Har HaMoriah, a little bit lower down. Why? Because it says by Binyamin, Ubenk Seifav Shachin, that the Eibishter dwells between the shoulders. Now the shoulders is not the highest point in the person's body. Why does it say Seifav? Because that tells you that you have to come down a little bit. And that's where the Beis HaMikdash is built in Har HaMoriah. Okay, now the Mefarshim actually discuss here, if after everything it comes to the bank safe of Shachin, which actually says by Binyamin, so why did David and Shmuel have to figure out where the place of the Beis HaMikdash is based on the cheshbonis that they said before from Sefer Yeshua? Why couldn't they just figure it out what it says clearly by Binyamin? Or bank safe of Shachin, so we know that it's Shachin, this is where the Eibishter dwells, by Shevet Binyamin. So it must be that in this pasuk itself, it can be touched in different ways. We know that the Beis HaMikdash, it was there only after it was by Mishkan Shiloi, Noiven Givain. Maybe you could say the Bank Seif of Shachin refers to other time periods, but not the permanent place where the Beis HaMikdash is. So therefore, they didn't prove it from that pasuk itself. They had to bring a raya from Sefer Yeshua, from the lashon that it says V'kamta V'alisa. But after they had that proof, they came back to Bank Seif of Shachin to get the exact spot in the Beis HaMikdash that it's not in the highest point, but it's a little bit lower down. Another reason why they brought it down a little bit, or another pshat, it says Gemiri, because we know that the Sanhedrin, Bechelka de Yehuda, the Sanhedrin, which is in the Beis HaMikdash, is in the portion of Yehuda. Because by Yehuda it says Le'yasser Shevet mi Yehuda Mechaykik mi bein Raglov, which refers to the Mechaykik, the Sanhedrin that make the law. They are by Shevet Yehuda. Ushchine and the Beis HaMikdash, where the Shchina dwells, is Bechelka de Binyamin. Is by Binyamin. Now, if you're going to put the Shechina, the Beis HaMikdash, the highest point by Binyamin, which is by En Eitam, Mispalik Tuva. It's going to be too far. It's not going to be together. So therefore they said, Mutav Dinisati Bei Porta, we're going to come down a little bit, K'dichsiv, Bank Seif of Shachin, and that will be in the place in Har HaMoriah. And now the Sanhedrin, which is in Shevet Yehuda, and the Beis HaMikdash, which is in Shevet Binyamin, is going to be together. As we saw before, that Shevet Yehuda went all the way up to the wall of the Mizbeach, and it comes out that where the Sanhedrin was, and the Lishkas HaGazis was by Yehuda, and then the Beis HaMikdash was by Shevet Binyamin. This is how they figured out the spot of exactly where the Beis HaMikdash has to be built. Now the Gemara concludes regarding the story that David and Shmuel were together and they figured this out. It was regarding this that Doega Doimi, that he was jealous of David HaMelech. There's the whole story about David HaMelech when he was running away from Shaul, and he was in the city of Noiv Ir HaKainim, and over there Achimelech served David HaMelech, and then Doeg went and said Lashon Hara to Shaul HaMelech that Achimelech is supporting David, which is rebelling against you. And because of this, Shaul said that they should kill out Noiv Ir HaKainim, and he sent Doeg to do that. Why did Doeg take Shaul's side? And why was he saying Lashon Hara against someone that was supporting David HaMelech? It all began with this, that he had a certain jealousy to David HaMelech because, the pasuk says, Ki kineisa, Kikinas Beischa Achalosni, that it's the jealousy of the house of the Beis Hamikdash which ate him up. Meaning he was jealous of David HaMelech that was able to come to understand where is the place of the Beis Hamikdash, and that brought him later to act the way he did. The pasuk also says, David HaMelech says, until him Schar Hashem LeDavid, Hashem should remember for David as Kal Unaisai, all this that he pained himself, meaning that he worked so hard, Hashem Nishbal Hashem V'Gaimer, that he swore for Hashem, that him Avei Ba'el Beisi. If I will come to the tent of the home of the Beis Hamikdash, will I have any sleep to my eyes? Until I find the permanent place for the Beis Hamikdash. So David HaMelech swore that he's going to find the right place for the Beis Hamikdash. And then it says, Hinish manua be'efrasa mitzanua b'zdei yar, that we heard it, and we found it. Where? We found it in Ephros and we found it in the Sadeh. The Gemara Darshans is that this pasuk is actually describing how he found the place of the Beis Hamikdash. It means Ephrasa ze Yeshua. Ephros was the place of the Yeshua. The Kasim, so it actually means Ephraim. The Kasim Ephraim. It comes from Shevet Ephraim. That they found the place of the Beis Hamikdash by looking into Sefer Yeshua. That comes from Ephraim, and they saw there the description of the border by Binyamin that it says the Lashon of Aliyah. They knew that this is the place of the Beis Hamikdash. And also Mitzanua B'zdei Yar. What does it mean in a Sadeh, in the field? Zeh Binyamin. It also refers to Binyamin. D'chsev Binyamin Ze'ev Yitraif, because Binyamin is compared to a wolf which attacks, like a wolf that's in B'zdei Yar, that's out in the field in the forest. That's how he found the place of the Beis Hamikdash. Okay.
Because the pasuk says that